Have some films been buried, not because they failed, but because they made audiences too uncomfortable to talk about? These are not ordinary thrillers, and they are not simple adult movies either. They are obsessive, stylish, dangerous, and sometimes so strange they feel like secret files from cinema's darker side. Today, we're counting down 12 underrated adult thrillers most viewers have never heard of. And number 1 may be the most disturbing cult classic on this list. Number 12, High Art, 1998. Some films whisper their danger instead of screaming it, and High Art is exactly that kind of quiet trap. On the surface, this looks like an intimate indie drama set inside the New York art world. But underneath, it is a smoky story about ambition, loneliness, creative hunger, and the kind of attraction that slowly rearranges a person's life. Directed by Lisa Cholodenko, the film follows a young magazine worker who becomes fascinated by a withdrawn photographer played by Ali Sheedy, whose presence feels magnetic, damaged, and impossible to fully understand. The film premiered at Sundance and earned major praise for Sheedy's performance, which is one reason it still feels like a hidden prestige gem rather than a simple cult romance. What makes High Art so underrated is its restraint. It does not chase shock for attention. It lets desire, addiction, career pressure, and emotional dependency build like cigarette smoke in a closed room. By the end, the film feels less like a romance and more like a warning. Some obsessions look beautiful only from a distance. Number 11, The Duke of Burgundy, 2014. This is not the kind of adult thriller that attacks you. It hypnotizes you until you realize something deeply unsettling is happening. The Duke of Burgundy, written and directed by Peter Strickland, is a visually lush British erotic romance drama starring Sidse Babett Knudsen and Kiara Dana. But calling it romance almost makes it sound too simple. The film is built around ritual, control, repetition, fantasy, and emotional exhaustion. Instead of giving viewers a normal love story, it studies a relationship where performance has become routine, and routine has started to feel like a prison. The costumes, interiors, butterflies, lectures, and dreamlike music create a strange old-world atmosphere, almost like the film was discovered in a locked cabinet from another era. What makes it powerful is that it is not really about shock. It is about what happens when two people want different versions of intimacy but are too attached to walk away. Strange, elegant, and quietly suffocating, this is adult cinema with a velvet glove and a hidden blade. Number 10, In the Cut, 2003. Few career risks were as misunderstood as Meg Ryan walking straight into Jane Campion's darkest maze. In the Cut is a psychological thriller directed by Jane Campion, starring Meg Ryan, Mark Ruffalo, and Jennifer Jason Leigh, and it follows a New York writing professor who becomes entangled with a detective during a murder investigation in her neighborhood. At the time, many viewers could not accept Ryan outside her romantic comedy image, which is exactly why this film feels more interesting today. It is grim, humid, paranoid, and deliberately uncomfortable. The city does not feel glamorous here. It feels dangerous, messy, and full of signals no one knows how to read. Campion uses the erotic thriller structure, but she twists it into something more psychological and female-centered, where desire is mixed with fear, suspicion, grief, and self-destruction. This is not a clean popcorn thriller. It is a bruised, risky, atmospheric film that asks whether danger can look like attraction when someone is already emotionally lost. That is why it deserves a second life. Number 9, Crimes of Passion, 1984. This is the kind of movie that looks like a neon fever dream, then slowly reveals it is actually a war over identity. Crimes of Passion is not just an erotic thriller. It is Ken Russell taking the polished surfaces of 80s America and tearing them open with wild color, religious guilt, corporate boredom, and secret desire. Kathleen Turner plays Joanna Crane, a successful fashion designer by day who lives another life at night under the name China Blue. That double identity is the hook, but the real tension is psychological. How many masks can one person wear before the mask becomes more honest than the life underneath? Anthony Perkins adds an even stranger layer as a disturbed preacher figure, bringing danger, judgment, and obsession into the story. What makes the film underrated is its refusal to behave. It is messy, bold, theatrical, and deliberately excessive, almost as if the movie is arguing with every safe idea about respectability. Under all the chaos, though, there is a surprisingly sharp point. Society often fears honesty more than sin. Crimes of Passion is not smooth or polite, but that is exactly why it still feels dangerous. Number 8. Body Double, 1984. A man looks through a window, thinks he is watching Desire, and accidentally steps into a nightmare. Body Double is Brian De Palma at his most stylish, suspicious, and shamelessly provocative. It takes the bones of classic Hitchcock suspense, especially voyeurism, mistaken identity, and obsession, then drags them into the glossy, artificial world of 80s Los Angeles. The story follows a struggling actor who becomes fascinated by a woman he watches from a distance, only to discover that what he sees may have been staged for him. That is the genius of the film. The viewer is trapped in the same position as the character, unsure whether they are watching reality, performance, fantasy, or manipulation. De Palma fills the movie with mirrors, windows, rotating cameras, and exaggerated set pieces that make everything feel seductive and fake at the same time. Some critics dismissed it as excessive, but time has been kinder because the film understands something brutal about cinema itself. Watching is never innocent. Body Double is lurid, clever, and deeply self-aware, a thriller that turns the audience's curiosity into part of the crime. Number 7. Intimacy, 2001. Two strangers meet in silence, but the silence becomes louder than any confession. Intimacy is a bleak, emotionally bruising British drama that takes a premise usually treated as scandal and turns it into something sadder, stranger, and more human. The film follows a man and a woman who meet regularly with almost no personal connection, trying to keep emotion out of an arrangement that is already emotionally explosive. What begins as distance slowly turns into curiosity, jealousy, and the painful need to know who the other person really is. That is where the film becomes more than a provocative adult drama. It is about loneliness so deep that physical closeness becomes easier than honest conversation. The atmosphere is gray, tired, and almost documentary-like, far away from the polished glamour of typical erotic thrillers. Every room feels lived in, every silence feels heavy, and every decision carries emotional damage. Intimacy is not designed to flatter the viewer or turn desire into fantasy. It strips the fantasy away and asks a harder question. What happens when people use each other to escape emptiness, then accidentally become real to one another? Number 6. Pola X, 1999. Some films do not simply cross a line. They behave as if the line was never real. Pola X is one of those strange, polarizing European works that seems built to divide audiences on purpose. Directed by Leos Carax, it follows a young writer from privilege and comfort into a darker, more chaotic world after a mysterious woman enters his life and forces him to question everything he thought he knew about family, identity, love, and artistic truth. The film has the feeling of a dream turning hostile. Mansions, motorcycles, forests, industrial spaces, and shadowy interiors all become part of a descent from surface beauty into emotional disorder. This is not a clean, erotic thriller with neat suspense beats. It is more like a psychological collapse dressed as a romantic tragedy, where desire becomes linked to rebellion, self-destruction, and the hunger to escape a false life. Many viewers find it difficult, even alienating, but that difficulty is the point. Pola X is underrated because it refuses comfort. It does not ask whether obsession is exciting. It asks whether chasing forbidden truth can destroy the person who claims to want it. Number 5. Conspirators of Pleasure, 1996. No dialogue, no normal romance, no easy explanation. Just 6 people building secret worlds no one else is meant to see. Conspirators of Pleasure is a surreal Czech cult film from Jan Švankmajer, and it may be the strangest entry on this list because it treats private obsession like a bizarre form of art. The film follows different characters as they create elaborate rituals, objects, costumes, and strange inventions to satisfy hidden personal fixations. There is very little spoken language, which makes the movie feel almost like a silent experiment in human secrecy. Instead of judging its characters in a simple way, the film watches them with dark humor, curiosity, and a weird kind of tenderness. Everything is handmade, tactile, and odd. Paper, brushes, mechanical devices, masks, and strange routines become extensions of inner loneliness. What makes it fascinating is that it turns adult desire into surreal comedy, not cheap shock. It suggests that everyone has a private theater inside their head, and some people simply build props for it. Conspirators of Pleasure is not mainstream entertainment. It is a strange little machine that asks viewers to admit how bizarre human longing can be. Number 4. Shortbus, 2006. Behind the Scandal is a surprisingly wounded movie about people desperate to feel less alone. Shortbus is often discussed only for its boundary-pushing reputation, but that narrow view misses why the film became a cult conversation piece in the first place. Directed by John Cameron Mitchell, it is set in a bohemian New York scene where artists, couples, performers, and emotionally lost strangers gather in search of connection. The film uses adult intimacy as a doorway into deeper questions. Why do people who are surrounded by others still feel isolated? Why does modern life make honesty so difficult? And why can pleasure sometimes fail to reach the places where people are truly hurting? The post-9/11 setting gives the movie a quiet ache, as if the city itself is trying to recover from invisible trauma. Instead of treating its characters like shock objects, Shortbus gives them fears, failures, tenderness, and embarrassment. That humanity is what makes it more interesting than its reputation. It may not be for every viewer, but underneath the controversy is a messy, sincere, oddly hopeful film about people trying to find emotional truth in a world that keeps teaching them to perform. Number 3. Singapore Sling, 1990. This movie feels less discovered than unearthed, like a cursed noir reel found in a locked basement. Singapore Sling is a Greek underground cult film that blends black and white detective mystery, grotesque humor, psychological horror, and avant-garde provocation into something almost impossible to categorize. It begins with the shape of classic film noir: a wounded detective, a missing woman, a dangerous house, and secrets waiting behind elegant walls. But very quickly, the film mutates into something far more deranged, theatrical, and nightmarish. Its world feels artificial in the most deliberate way, as if old Hollywood glamour has rotted from the inside and turned into a stage for obsession, cruelty, and madness. The performances are heightened, the imagery is severe, and the atmosphere is so stylized that it becomes hypnotic even when it is deeply uncomfortable. Singapore Sling is not underrated because it is easy to recommend. It is underrated because almost nothing else feels like it. It takes the erotic thriller, tears out the glamour, and leaves behind a feverish experiment in power and decay. This is cult cinema at its most dangerous, not polished, not safe, but unforgettable. Number 2. The Ages of Lulu, 1990. Some coming-of-age stories are gentle. This one walks straight into obsession, confusion, and emotional danger. The Ages of Lulu, directed by Bigas Luna, is a Spanish cult drama that became notorious because it refused to soften its portrait of desire, power, and self-discovery. Based on the novel by Almudena Grandes, the film follows Lulu through a life shaped by intense attraction, risky choices, and the search for identity in places that become increasingly unstable. What makes it more than a simple scandal film is the way it connects personal freedom with vulnerability. Lulu is not presented as a neat symbol or a moral lesson. She is someone moving through desire, curiosity, control, and consequence, often without fully understanding the emotional cost until the damage has already begun. The film's reputation has often overshadowed its psychological angle, but that is exactly why it fits this list. It belongs to a period of European cinema where filmmakers were willing to confront taboo subjects with an almost reckless seriousness. The Ages of Lulu is not comfortable, and it should not be treated casually. Its power comes from showing how liberation and danger can sometimes wear the same face. Number 1. Crash, 1996. The most disturbing film on this list does not chase desire. It studies what happens when desire becomes damaged beyond recognition. Crash, directed by David Cronenberg, is one of the most controversial adult psychological dramas of the 90s. And even decades later, it still feels cold, alien, and difficult to shake off. Based on J.G. Ballard's novel, the film follows people who become drawn into a strange subculture where danger, technology, injury, and attraction blur into one unsettling obsession. Cronenberg does not shoot it like a normal thriller. There is no comforting moral guide, no warm emotional release, and no easy explanation that lets the viewer relax. The city feels metallic, the characters seem emotionally numb, and every interaction carries the disturbing sense that modern life has rewired their desires into something inhuman. That is why Crash earns the number 1 spot. It is not merely provocative, it is philosophical horror disguised as an adult drama. It asks whether a society addicted to machines, speed, surfaces, and spectacle can still understand real intimacy. Many films try to shock. Crash does something more lasting. It makes shock feel like a diagnosis. And that is what makes these films so hard to forget. They are not just adult thrillers. They are secret psychological traps dressed as cinema. Some are beautiful, some are disturbing, and some feel almost forbidden to discuss. Which one shocked you the most? And which hidden cult film should be in part 2? Comment below, like, and subscribe for more.